The latter stage of the US Open can be summed up in 3 words: puke, nerves, and rewards. Welcome, tennis fans, to the 55th episode of Tennis Traverse, Exploring the Game, the podcast that delves into the heart of the tennis world. I'm your host, Ivy Zhang, and in today's episode, I will be talking about the events at the second week of the US Open, as well as predicting the men's final results. And before we begin, I do want to say I'm really proud of myself because I did get the predictions of the women's final correct, both the players as well as the winner of the tournament, which is Sabalenka. So I also have Sinner winning the whole men's tournament. So if that works out, then I'll get my men's prediction correct as well. So I'm really proud of myself, and yeah, so let's just dive into the women's side first. I want to start off by talking about some interesting round of 16 matches. So there is Olympic finals rematch between Zheng Qinwen and Donna Vekic in the round of 16, and that match, I think, beside the point that it was one of the greatest matches this year at the US Open, Zheng Qinwen won with a score of 7-6, 7-2 in the first set tiebreak, 4-6, and 6-2 in the deciding set. So it was an amazing and incredible match. However, it did have the latest finish out of the entire US Open history. And I was listening to the tennis podcast, and they were talking about how the scheduling is just completely outdated because tennis matches are going on longer than it used to. So it really doesn't make sense, especially to put, for example, during the net session, a women's match after a best of 5 men's match, because obviously for you to be waiting constantly to come out is just really unfortunate, and you really don't know when you will be able to play, and it will severely, I think, affect the quality of the matches. So I really think that it is a problem, and maybe just starting it a day early, or maybe putting some of the matches when it's the later stages of the tournament onto courts such as court 17 or just other courts can maybe just help the scheduling a bit, because I think not only this match but throughout the entire tournaments, players are affected by these extreme late finishes, and just obviously it's an Olympic year, so everyone is completely exhausted. So I apologize if you guys can hear the door creaking in the background. I'm kind of opening my windows, so my door was creaking, but I closed the door, so now I hope the quality is better for you guys. But we'll move on to our next point, which is Emma Navarro beating Coco Gauff. So that match, even though it was a 3-set match, I really didn't think it was an entertaining match just because of how many unforced errors Coco Gauff made. It wasn't that Emma Navarro was playing just super amazing and just hitting every shot inside. It was Coco Gauff just gifting her opponent's points. She had, I believe, 11 double faults in the deciding set. Her serve just completely gave up on her, and it was really a hard thing to see. But I mean, Coco will understand after the tough loss at this tournament what she can improve on, and maybe just focusing on improving the consistency of her serve, both her first and second serve, because I think the serve and the unforced error is the huge determining factor in this match. And I think Emma Navarro was just a more consistent player, not that she was playing just incredibly well. Obviously, I'm not taking anything away from her. It's just Coco Gauff wasn't hitting some shots that she is able to. She had so many double faults, and that's just 3 points to her opponent. And obviously, there's a lot of round of 16 matches, but I'm just talking about the ones that I think are worth mentioning or significant. So the next match I want to talk about is Muchova beating Jasmine Paolini. So I think, at least if you really like tennis or you understand tennis, you are looking forward to this match, because I was truly looking forward to this match. And Muchova beat Paolini by a score of 6-3, 6-3. So it really wasn't as competitive as I would like it to be score-wise. However, I think there were some amazing rallies in the points. And Muchova, I mean, she just dominated. She did beat Naomi Osaka, so I was kind of just, because obviously I like Naomi Osaka, so it was just a hard thing to take in. But I think Muchova is truly playing her best tennis. When she's able to strike the ball, it's super entertaining to watch. She has so much power, but at the same time she's so good at just moving to the net and volleying. So I think every part of her game is fully developed, and she also likes to use her slice a lot, and she really changes up the game and have a really high tennis IQ, which is just incredible to watch. So even though Muchova did lose to Pegula in the semifinals, I think despite coming back from her wrist injury, I think there's so much more that she can do. And obviously we have the Australian Open coming up, so I'm really interested to see how she does in the next major. And there's also a bit of a break, so hopefully she can get the rest she needs to, because in the semifinal match, which I will talk about later, I think it was apparent that she just ran out of gas. So for her to come back in Australian Open, I think I really have a good faith that she's going to do incredible. Okay, and now I want to talk about some quarterfinal matches. There are two that I think are worth talking about. The first one being Aryna Sabalenka beating Zheng Qinwen 6-1, 6-2. So this was just, completely dominated by Sabalenka. There really wasn't that much fight left in Zheng Qinwen, because Sabalenka's forehand is just so powerful that Zheng Qinwen, to put it simply, she just couldn't handle it. She just couldn't manage to put the ball inside the court and stay in a rally with Sabalenka. And once, for example, Zheng Qinwen hits in a second serve, Sabalenka will just completely crush the ball, and there's really nothing that Zheng Qinwen could do. So, it's really a sad scoreline considering Zheng Qinwen is the reigning gold medalist of the Olympics, but I think this year has been incredible for her. I think it's one of her biggest breakthrough years. She received so many more fans, and just to win a gold medal is such a huge honor. I think she really values her gold medal, and she probably gained a lot of confidence, including beating Iga Swiatek on clay at literally Roland Garros, which is court Philippe Chatrier. It's just incredible. So I think it's interesting to see how her next year will be. I feel like either going to be incredible, she might be able to make it to the finals or even win a title at a Grand Slam, or it's just going to be completely just not as well as this year, because I think there's so much expectation for her to live up to that the stress and pressure can sometimes catch up. And the other match I want to talk about is Jessica Pegula beating Iga Swiatek with a score of 6-2 and 6-4. So this was completely unexpected to me. I really thought Iga was going to dominate because she played really well. I think she improved her level throughout this tournament, but in this particular match, she just couldn't hit the ball. She was just sort of similar to Coco Gauff, but worse, because she just couldn't get the ball in play no matter what. Coco still managed to win the second set and drag the game to a deciding set, but Iga was just not hitting balls in a way that just keeps the ball into the court, and she keeps on trying to be on the offensive side, but during that match day she wasn't capable of always being on the offensive side. She was just, whenever she tries to, for example, change a direction, it would just go into the net, and it was just really a hard sight to see. And we can see that Iga was devastated after the match, and it was kind of invasive in my opinion, because the camera panned to her in the sort of the locker rooms where she was crying while her trainer stretched her out. It was really a hard scene to see, but I really think she needs to improve on just maybe developing more of her game, because I think she's not just about attacking and hitting really aggressive shots. I think when she can't find that part of the game, she still have to be able to win matches by just using different techniques, such as maybe sometimes being on the defensive side and winning the point like that. And I think diversifying her game could really take her a long way, because really I feel like during Roland Garros, her offensive is just always working. So she really didn't have to develop that much of a game where, for example, when she was trying to be on the offensive side and her game just wasn't working, like she really didn't have to develop as much of it because her A game was always on, if that makes sense. So I think just these matches, these tough losses in Grand Slams, in Australia, in the US Open, and in Wimbledon is just devastating. But I think it's a really good learning lesson for her to understand what she can do when she's maybe not having the best day to just win these matches. And I now want to talk about the semifinals. So I think both of the semifinals are kind of entertaining. For Jessica Pegula beating Muchova was just really interesting, because I think both players, even though I think wasn't a time where they were both playing at their top level, I think they both peaked at different times of the match. So Karolina Muchova, for example, she peaked, I think, in the first set. So she was just playing incredible tennis. She beat Pegula with a score of 6-1. However, after the first set, we can see that her level kind of dropped a little bit. She wasn't able to put away as many shots as she did, and it just wasn't her best tennis. We've seen her best tennis this tournament, and it's incredible. But her levels just dropped, and Pegula's level peaked. So it was just suddenly a change in energy, and with the US crowd, everyone was rooting for Pegula, and finally, Muchova lost the deciding set with a score of 6-6. So it was just kind of devastating. But I think, as I said before, we will see more of Muchova for sure. The next semifinal match is between Emma Navarro and Aryna Sabalenka. I think Sabalenka still was just completely dominant in this match. I mean, the second set, there was a moment where Navarro was having a little bit of a fight, but I think, to use the tiebreak score in the second set, 7-2, I think Sabalenka is just able to clinch on to those important points at important moments where she maybe wasn't so comfortable doing that last year, where she lost to Coco Gauff. I think throughout that match, she was just sort of having a mental breakdown because of obviously the crowd cheering for Coco Gauff super loudly, and just herself dealing with the pressure, because she hasn't had the experience of dealing with such a one-sided crowd and just such a high-stake atmosphere. But I think she did gain a lot of experience from, for example, being in Australia, winning 2 titles there, and coming back from the US Open. I think she wants desperately to prove to herself that she is capable of winning when the stakes are super high, and I think she just did that. And I think it is similar in the finals, but I really think this year's finals was one of the best matches ever played, even though it was in 2 straight sets where Sabalenka won 7-5, 7-5. I watched the whole match, and I think there were some times where Pegula certainly played out her tennis. I have a really vivid memory, I think, in the second set where Pegula served like a weak second serve, and Sabalenka, being Sabalenka, she hit a really powerful forehand, and Pegula just squatted down and just hit a really low forehand across down the line, and it was just incredible. The ball speed was just incredible. She was using Sabalenka's ball speed, and the spin of that ball was beautiful. So there were points where I think Pegula was finding her rhythm. However, I think just Sabalenka was able to, citing the tennis podcast words, fight the New York demons, because I think because of how an offensive player she is the one that decides the outcome of a match. If she is really good at just hitting the balls, striking the balls cleanly, I think she's the best hardcore player right now, and I think she will win the match. But when it's just her mind not like just having mental struggles and not managing to keep the balls in play, that's where the opponent may catch onto that. And I think there are certain times in this match where she was a little bit just iffy, if that makes sense. Like, she wasn't hitting all the balls inside, and there were some just unforced errors that I think shouldn't happen, but she is able to fight those like demons off, in quotes, and to win that match. And I think it's to prove to herself that, like, as the tennis podcast say, it's sort of like how she's playing for both last year's match and this year's match, because she's so desperate to prove to herself that she is capable of winning the US Open title, and she's just mentally there. And I think we really do see her improvement from last year compared to this year, and I'm really proud of her. I think she really has a shot of getting that Australian Open title next year if like nothing changes. And I'm really excited to see what her WTA finals run will be like. I mean, there's still such a huge chunk of, sorry if you guys can hear the plane in the background, but there's still such a huge chunk of the hardcourt season left in Asia, and I think she really is capable of using these opportunities to gain more points. For example, in the China Open, I think it's a great opportunity for her to just maybe gain more fans and just prove to herself that she is capable of winning titles consecutively. Okay, now I want to talk about the men's side. So I think, as I said before, the men's side is just completely open. There's so much that's just up to the players, up to who can clinch the important moments, because two of the best players in the world, Novak Djokovic and Carlos Alcaraz, was out in the early stages of the US Open. Carlos Alcaraz losing to Boldek van de Zengshop, and Novak Djokovic losing to Alexei Popyrin. So it was just really up to the players, such as, for example, Taylor Fritz and Frances Tiafoe, Jack Draper, who is capable of clinching on to this just incredibly rare opportunity, in my opinion. And let's do the same thing and talk about some round of 16 matches. So I want to talk about Taylor Fritz beating Casper Ruud in 4 sets. I think Taylor just wasn't playing really well in the first set. He lost 3-6, and I was there live watching that match, and I think Taylor was just not on his A game. He wasn't hitting the shots. He was missing a lot of balls wide, and it was just a hard sight to see, because I was seeing how much potential he had, and like I understood where he wanted the ball to be, if that makes sense, but he just wasn't able to perform the point as he would have liked to. However, I think similar with Casper, I think his level just completely just dropped after the first set, especially in the fourth. It was just completely one-sided, and I felt that physically he wasn't there. Like, for example, he tripped on his own sweat because he was sweating through his shoes. It was kind of just a hard sight to see, but to be frank, it was kind of just gross because he tripped on his sweat and he was using a towel to wipe his sweat on the ground, wipe the sweat on the ground. It was the same towel. It was kind of gross, but I mean, we can really tell from that detail that Casper just was not there. His physical just wasn't there at all, so it was really a hard thing to see. I now want to talk about the other round of 16 match, which is Grigor Dimitrov beating Andrew Rublev in 5, and it was, I think, not really an entertaining match, despite it being a 5-set match. I felt that both of these players, obviously, it was a super close match, but it just wasn't as high of a level as I would have thought. And I think the point I do want to point out is Andrei Rublev just being so mentally drained that he whacked himself with his racket and he had to get a medical timeout because he was bleeding. And it's just a worrisome sight to see. I mean, it's really not a great example, especially for young kids out there. And I think he needs to get help, not for for himself, obviously, but also just for the kids out there who he is, like, for example, someone's role model. I think it's just a really hard thing for the other people to see out there, and it was just a really hard thing, I think, for anyone to see. It was a really hard thing for me to see, because it's just something that I think players struggle with, and I think Rublev struggled with it severely, and he really needs to maybe just take a break from tennis and just to work on himself and come back when he is ready to compete at a high level and be a role model for everyone else, because it really isn't just, I think, a way for a player to act. So yeah, okay, now let's move on to a sort of lighthearted topic, which is Taylor Fritz beating Alexander Zverev in 4. I mean, Taylor Fritz has just been, I think, really great this whole entire tournament. I think he realized his opportunity, and he is the only one where I think he really wanted to get that opportunity, and he beat Zverev, and Zverev was really mad at himself, and I, to be honest, just think he was outplayed. I think Taylor Fritz played amazing, but Zverev was like fuming after Taylor Fritz beat him. But in my opinion, I think Taylor played amazing, as I said before. But I mean, Zverev, I think, still have a chance of winning a Grand Slam, maybe at the French Open, because I think he is really good on all surfaces. So I think there is a chance for him to get a Grand Slam title, which he desperately wants. And now I want to talk about Dimitrov withdrawing against Tiafoe. This was heart-wrenching to see, because I think Dimitrov was the oldest out of everyone that's left in this tournament, and it was just really sad to see Dimitrov, who's been fighting for so long, who's always sort of lived in the shadow of the big three, maybe even the big four, and when there's finally a moment, he was just injured, and it was heartbreaking to see, and it's just super unfair, I think. And I think there has been a lot of just really serious topics and just sad moments in the US Open, especially on the men's side. For example, Dimitrov withdrawing and Andrei Rublev's situation. I think all of these are just really devastating. And now I want to talk about the semifinals, which is Taylor Fritz beating Tiafoe in 5. Still, I think it's heart-wrenching for Tiafoe to lose, but Taylor Fritz did play really well. I think both of them, sort of same with the Muchova and Pegula match, they peaked at different times, and it, to be honest, was just kind of, they were playing in like fast forward, like all of them are holding serves just really fast. It was just like a love hold, and then they're just trying to get to that tiebreak, so it's just really weird. But I mean, Taylor Fritz did manage to capture that opportunity. And now I want to talk about Sinner beating Jack Draper. So Sinner beat Jack Draper in 3 straight sets, and guys, I think I have a newfound obsession with Jack Draper, because I just think he plays really well, and even though I feel like this tournament really wasn't like a huge test for him, because a lot of the players he played just wasn't at their top level, but I think it's still an impressive run, and for him to have like sort of a close match to Sinner, like losing 5-7 and then having a tiebreak loss and then losing 2-6, I think it's a really just close match, and I'm really proud of him for that. I think he's a player that I definitely will keep on looking for. However, he does say that he struggled mentally and physically because of just the anxiety of being at such a high level, because, well, he puked and it was kind of gross. But, I mean, it shows how the mental and the physical of a player is connected, and anxiety can not just be affected mentally, it can also show up just in physical sort of situations as well. And I think However, Sinner really did not play as well. I think he isn't at his top level, and I think that gives a little hope to Taylor Fritz in the finals. So now I think it transitions us perfectly to the finals, which will be happening today. And by the time my episode comes out, you guys will know who the winner is. So feel free to skip out on this and just finish the episode right here. But I do want to predict. So I think Sinner will win in 4. And the reason I said in 4 and not in 3 is because Sinner is not at his best level at this tournament. I really do think Taylor Fritz is playing one of his best tournaments yet. There are some times where I think Taylor Fritz is playing amazingly, which I really don't get that feeling when I'm watching Sinner play this year. So I really think Taylor Fritz have a chance. So it's either Sinner in 4 or 5, and maybe Taylor. However, I still don't think Taylor can take it to the deciding set because he hasn't been competing at such a high level as Sinner did, because Sinner was down 2 sets against Medvedev in Australia and managed to come back. But Taylor Fritz isn't used to obviously playing in a Grand Slam final. So I'm really interested to see what this matchup takes us. And that sums up today's episode. I did leave links of just some matches I think are worth watching. So if you guys want to click on the links, feel free. And if you haven't subscribed, feel free to do so. Follow all of my social media, that is Instagram and Twitter, using @TennisTraverse, that is @TennisTraverse. If you're listening on YouTube, comment, like, and subscribe. All of my social medias are also linked in the show notes. If you're listening on other streaming platforms, please rate my show. And I'm really excited that we have so much good tennis that's going on right now, but I'm really sad that it's all coming to an end. And even though there is still a really intense hardcore swing, but tell me what you guys want me to cover in the tennis world. I'm really excited to be sharing my love for tennis with all of you guys, and I hope you guys really learn a lot and just have the best time with me when you're listening to this episode. And I think that's my goal for this podcast, is for everyone to just learn something. And feel free to reach out if you want to talk about something tennis related with me, and I'd be happy to chat. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week. Bye.